Hey, Garrett, we'll get you going here in a minute. Hey, Garrett. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, that's because I'm muted. It's not you, it's me.
All right.
Try that. There we go. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute, move into the building and get the TV going. I'll be right back.
All right.
I wish
No, just as long as you got everything on it. Free to go. Yeah.
It's really good.
I'm okay with that.
If I were you, I'd be trying.
Now, I rely on For sure, sure. All the seats like
When I just made a guy.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And it's 6:01, and we need to start the meeting. All right, I call to order the meeting. I call to order the meeting of the Deer Park Planning Commission at 6:01. We started. Okay, I appreciate everyone turning off their cell phone, putting them on silent this morning, because that's what we do here. If you are not part of the application process or anything like that, you may have something to say, make sure that you sign in at the front there. And we will get moving through the agenda. Hello, John, can you hear us? Okay, so all of the planning commissioners are present. Thank you. And we have Angelina and Chad here with us today. We have a consent agenda with the minutes from January 12th, the financial report from February 23rd, and we have no correspondence. It's brought to my attention, we do have a correction on the minutes. Carol was not here in February. So Angelina will fix that. So do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion from Terry to accept it. Do I have a second? Second. Second from Russ. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, forget about you. All those opposed say no. All right, moving forward, reports from the staff. Chad, do you have something to report to us?
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a few code enforcement issues that we're working on, and the city and I, having to do with planning issues, zoning issues. One of them is, the potential for an illegal long-term rental on one piece of property that's only supposed to have one dwelling. We're working on that. We've got another kind of a land dispute that working out, that the attorneys are working that one out. So we're just kind of sitting back and making sure that they continue on. But nothing really of significance, and it's going fairly smoothly. As you see, we finally got the play gym up and working for the kids. That was quite the endeavor with some parts that had to come from a long way away. But the kids are really enjoying it. And to finish that project off, we're getting ready to asphalt in the ADA parking space that you folks requested during that conditional use process. And the other thing that we're getting ready to do is, rather than putting a fence around the whole thing, as was kind of by design, instead of putting a fence on top of the wall, we're going to put a bench all the way around that wall. It's going to be made out of Trex decking, kind of be gray. It's going to look nice so people can turn around and enjoy the park, or they can sit and watch their kids from any location within that. So that's been pretty good. And the last thing that we're working on that is also the kids from the high school for their project. They're going to put up a lending library for kids' books in that location as well. So after a garbage can and some puppy papers, we should be complete with that project. Then we'll have to talk a little bit about a bit of an opening, which maybe be around Easter. The fire department's going to do an Easter egg hunt, so we thought that might be fun to do. And so about the park, question for me?
Are dogs allowed in there?
Yeah, we don't have dogs not allowed in there until we have some problems. We'll kind of keep an eye on things, but we check that park every morning except Sundays. and make sure it's clean.
Can they go down the slide?
It.
They gotta sign a waiver.
It's a great question, though. I'll give it a shot with my dog list.
So is it complete, the construction complete of the playground material?
Yes. Kids have been playing on it, we deem it safe, and we keep an eye on it to make sure that we're checking it all the time. Make sure that's going on.
Looks great.
Yeah, thank you for your help with all that. Got a few other little issues around town, but things are working pretty smooth, and unless you have any questions, that's pretty well all I have right at the moment.
Angela, you got anything for us?
We are finally at the end of setting up for e-permitting. So come March 20th, you'll now be able to apply for all planning commission applications online.
Which is just part of the project that she's done. You'll also be able to do all your building permits and all of that online tracked. We're working on it. We just worked on our fee schedule and increased our fees for the city of the building, just to bring it up to average in the area. We were, of course, the lowest in the area, and Angelina put in hundreds of hours on this thing, and she's done a wonderful job.
Excellent. Great, okay, thank you. We have the goals list in front of us. Is there any additions or comments on it? We could see in our minutes from last meeting that we changed some things with that. Yeah, sure.
Would it be possible to add, taking a look at our tree ordinance onto the goals list?
Could you be more? It's been a long day. Specific? Are you looking for something specific with the tree ordinance?
There's some things that I would like to see changed in it, and I just thought if we could take a look at it and discuss it. And I also wanted to supply a copy to everybody of the Cannon Beach tree ordinance, which I think is vastly superior. So, does that sound reasonable, or?
Yeah, I was just looking to see if there were certain things, you know. We could add that on. Wherever you'd like to. Did you have a, so maybe zoning would be under zoning ordinance amendment considerations? Is that where it would probably be? So I guess, I mean, Sharon's asked that, any other discussion on that?
We get a copy of that ordinance if we're gonna be looking at it.
Okay, all right, so, well, what words would you like to use?
The tree permitting process.
Do we want to, okay, we want to review it? Is that what we'd like to do?
And possibly rewrite it.
Okay. All right, so, if you can add that to our list, Angelina, for the, on the goals list, and as Terry's asked, if you can, give us a copy for the next meeting, is that what you'd like to do, or would you like it beforehand?
Whatever.
Whenever, he says.
Of our ordinance or of the beach?
Well,
I've got the Cannon Beach one, I will supply that to you.
So just ours.
Yeah, but if they could have both, that
Yeah,
would.
we could probably send both. Then we can do this.
send an email, and because probably a lot of paper in there, so
Okay.
we'll save some trees. I run. Any other things? No, okay, moving ahead. Oh, commissioners, I forgot. Do the commissioners have anything to say today? They'd like to share with us? No? Hearing nothing, we'll move ahead. Visitors' comments. Are there any visitors that would like to say anything that is not related to agenda items tonight? Seeing nothing, and I don't know if anyone's online or not.
We
Chad.
have got about 8 or so people online.
Ty, my civil, said that he wasn't able, he needs to be admitted.
I've got them now.
I am here. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so no one wants to say anything. Okay, we'll move ahead from that. Then I am going to open the public hearing. We have two public hearings on our agenda tonight. I'm going to read the statement once. It will cover both public hearings, but I need to read it twice. So I need to read the disclosure statement for any of those that have not heard it. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the application and must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code. The city zoning code specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes apply to proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the city council or land use board of appeals or to seek damages in circuit court due to condition of approval. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the planning commission for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence, arguments, or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The hearings body shall grant the request by scheduling a date to finish the hearing, a continuance to a time and date certain, or by leaving the record open for additional evidence, argument, or testimony pursuant to ORS 197.763(6)A through E. Commissioners, would you like to declare a conflict of interest in ex parte contact or personal bias with either of the public hearings tonight? Yes, sure.
I visited the site on Highway 101.
Okay.
Storage. I visited both sites.
And Russ visited both?
Both.
Both. And I visited both of them also. So, okay. So I'm going to open first. Oh, I have to ask the audience, sorry. Audience, are there any challenges to the commission's ability to make an impartial decision? Hearing nothing. All right, I'm going to open first. We'll have the public hearing file number 23-01B. Variance request submitted by Troy O'Brien for property located at 3899 Highway 101 North and 3883-3899 and further described it as Assessor's Plat 6.10.B3B, tax lot 4700, well, that doesn't make much sense. Tax block 4700, 4700, 5200, 5300, 5303. Said request is a side yard setback of 5 feet in place of the 15-foot required buffer between residential and commercial, and a 10-foot fence height on the north side property line. Property for safety and deterring access between the boarding properties. For those of you that are new to the process, we will first hear the staff report. Then the applicant will speak, and then there will be an opportunity for proponents, opponents, and neutral comments. And then the applicant may have a rebuttal if they like, and then we will close the public hearing. So first we'll hear from the staff report. You have someone?
I do, and I believe we have Mr. Garrett online. Garrett, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
There you are.
Good evening, commissioners. So this is a variance request at 3899 Highway 101 North regarding a setback for buildings that are proposed to be constructed there, and regarding a proposed new fence. staff has reviewed the overall site plan for this expansion of an existing storage use in the C2 zone. And it appears to be consistent with the Gerhardt zoning ordinance, with the exception of the issues that the applicant requested a variance for. So I'm going to review a little bit of background information using just a few PowerPoint slides, and then we'll review some of the details of the staff report with you. And if you in the room cannot see a PowerPoint slide on the screen,
So far,
please.
so good, Garrett.
All right, thank you. This is just a photograph of the site from Highway 101. And again, this is in the C2 zone. It's a single, well, a handful of properties in common ownership in the C2 zone. Garden Terrace Road borders the property to the north, along with a residential lot at the end of the Garden Terrace Road cul-de-sac. And the variance requests pertain to this northern property boundary. So the 5-foot setback request is for the northern property boundary, and the variance to fence height and fence material pertains to the fence that would run along the northern property boundary. And those requests do not pertain to the other property boundaries. Between the subject property and Garden Terrace Road and this single residential lot at the end of the cul-de-sac is a berm that in places is up to about 8 feet tall, providing some buffering effect between the subject property and the residential neighborhood to the north. Garden Terrace Road itself provides some buffering effect as well in the form of additional distance between some of those lots and the subject. And there's vegetation in this bermed area between the road and the subject property as well. So those are some important background details related to the request that I'll revisit in just a moment. I think it's important to note, I said that the berm is up to 8 feet tall in places, and in other places it is much shorter than that, and it is easy to see from Garden Terrace Road, for example, onto the subject property. So the basic Gerhardt zoning ordinance standards that are at issue are a setback requirement of 15 feet between the commercial property and properties that are zoned residential. The applicant's requesting 5 feet for new buildings that will be placed near that northern property line, and a requirement in for the C2 zone that when there's adjacent residential properties, that there be a 6-foot tall wooden fence or a landscaping plan specifying, I believe, dense evergreen vegetation up to 8 feet tall. So that's like an affirmative obligation to screen the property view from neighboring properties. And then in Article 6, there's a requirement that fences placed within setbacks not be taller than 6 feet. And so that's a sort of a restriction. And so in both regards, a variance is needed to allow a 10-foot tall fence within the setback and a fence that is chain link rather than wood, and not having a landscaping plan for 8-foot tall dense evergreen vegetation. Okay, and so this is a zoomed in detail on the applicant's site plan of the northern property boundary. And you can see some of the existing, vegetation along the boundary, and some of the contour lines about halfway from the western from Highway 101 to the eastern property line, the berm is at its maximum height and provides good visual screening from neighboring areas. All right. So with some of those observations out of the way, let's review the staff report findings. So I'm going to go to the four basic criteria for approving variances. Starting with the first, is the request necessary to prevent a hardship to the applicant? So staff in the staff report found that the applicant's response to this criteria was reasonable and acceptable. The applicant identified issues with the number of storage units that they can accommodate along the northern property boundary, where they're trying to replace what is currently appears to be outdoor uncovered RV and trailer storage, and issues with turning movements for large vehicles, including fire trucks, with their overall site layout. If they were to move their northernmost buildings 10 feet to the south to comply with the 15-foot setback. So their overall site layout includes buildings along the north property line, buildings that comply with the setback along the south property line, and buildings in the middle of the property with that provides for turning movements to circle around those central buildings. And their argument seems reasonable that allowing a 5-foot setback on the northern property boundary would facilitate site circulation better and allow for the full utilization of the site for storage units. Moving on to the second criteria, will the proposed development be injurious to the adjacent area in which the property is located? Oh, excuse me, I just skipped over the fence variance requests for criteria number 1. So let me revisit that. Okay, so on the fence, the applicant's arguments were found to be partially acceptable and reasonable. So the applicant seemed to argue that the existing vegetation and berm height throughout the northern property boundary would sufficiently block views of the storage property from the neighborhood. And staff found that that's not the case, and that you can still see the property from Garden Terrace Road, for example, despite the berm and vegetation. And applicant also argued that the berm adjacent to the proposed fence would allow a trespasser to climb the berm and easily climb over a 6-foot fence that complies with the setback requirement, or with the height requirement. And again, staff found that that's not a reasonable argument throughout the entire length of the northern property boundary. And so a recommended condition of approval, should the Planning Commission choose to adopt the findings in this report, would be to limit the horizontal extent of fencing that is 10 feet tall, and to require some landscape screening or wood fencing to comply with that affirmative requirement to screen views of the property as well along some of that northern property boundary. All right, moving on to the second criteria. Will the variance be injurious to the adjacent area? As of the writing of the staff report, and to my knowledge, up until now, we have not received any comments suggesting that any neighbors would experience an injury from the granting of this variance. That being said, as I just discussed in regards to the views of the property, we do have concerns about that, and a condition of approval addresses it. Is the request necessary to enable reasonable use of the property? Staff found that the applicant's arguments are reasonable. And again, drawing your attention back to site circulation in regards to the building setback. And their valid concern about security and people scaling the fence from the berm seems reasonable. So in that regard, staff found that the proposal is consistent with the criteria. And in regards to the comprehensive plan, staff did not find any comprehensive plan provisions that were applicable approval criteria or that would be relevant to the decision. So that's the basic overview of the facts and findings as I saw them. And overall, the recommendation is to approve the variance request with 2 conditions, and those are listed in the staff report. And one of them, is essentially a big modification to the applicant's proposal, and it's where the berm is less than 6 feet tall. The required yard shall contain a dense evergreen planting, which attains a mature height of at least 8 feet. A fence made of wood between 6 feet and 10 feet tall, or a combination of evergreen plantings and wood fencing. And the applicant should submit this plan, a plan demonstrating compliance with that condition as part of the building permit review process. So that condition is basically just taking code language from the Gearhart zoning ordinance and saying that where the berm is less than 6 feet tall, we still have to comply with that, those fence requirements. The other approval criteria, the other conditions of approval that are recommended here, the next one is based on a comment from city staff, just requiring that upgrades and connections to the water system will be the responsibility of the owner. And another comment from city staff related to potential drainage issues in the area and wanting to see more details on the applicant's drainage plan. This didn't seem, the applicant wanted to see more details on the applicant's drainage plan. And finally, in case the applicant hasn't addressed the fire department's issues yet with site circulation, there might have been a loose end there. We added a condition that the applicant needs to finish modifying their plans to comply with the fire department's recommendations. That is the end of the staff report, and I'm happy to answer questions when the time comes for that.
The time is now. Are there questions? Does anyone have any questions? Why do we not have the report from the fire department or any of the other departments in our package?
So I've learned that it is common practice to provide the planning commission with the actual comment emails, documents, correspondences, and we'll do that from now on. But I apologize, I didn't know that was the practice.
Can you tell us what it said, since we do not have those letters or anything? So we don't know what they said, and that's important in our community.
Sure. One moment, please.
Yeah.
All right.
It's okay.
So, um, so the fire department connection at the southeast corner of the site is shown, but at the other end of the fire department connection, which is south of the fire hydrant, needs to be 15 to 20 feet. Both of the fire department connections will need to connect to each other underground. And there will also need to be access for the fire department through the proposed landscape buffer south of the fire department connection to enable a fire engine to access the hydrant. So these comments I felt were not directly related to the variance requests at the northern property boundary, but they are here, and I'll certainly make a habit in the future of providing the actual comments to you all with the agenda packet.
Because on your conditions on 4, you say modify plans to accommodate fire department. And I'm not having a clear picture of what you're talking about.
Well, but isn't that only relevant to the building permit, not the variance?
It is, I don't think that those comments from the fire department really had to do with the
Okay.
northern boundary, but those are things that we will make sure.
But it talks about that they needed to put the building closer to the setback in order to accommodate the fire engines. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say that would be one of the reasons for sure, yes.
Okay, so then that's.
And I think that was laid out in the map that we have with the.
Yeah,
turnaround.
Oh, I know we have maps.
But it wasn't listed in the staff report.
I'm trying to. Okay, so my next question for you was that, my very haphazard counting of storage units they're planning to add to this whole thing. And though it's not part of this, it's the way I look at things with the overall plan, is they're gonna add 223 units to storage units. Does this have any effect on traffic onto 101?
I didn't prepare any findings related to traffic impact on 101. Again, the review was very narrowly related to the variance request itself, related to the position of buildings and the fence details. The city can require a traffic impact analysis, irregardless of the variance, prior to approving the overall development.
So the question I had, well, we've got variable fence heights along that north boundary that you described in terms of vegetation and berm height. How is that determined? Is that going to be the building inspector or Chad? If we're granting the variance and saying, yeah, you can build this fence, someone needs to outline it, monitor it. And where does that fall? I mean, we aren't going to decide that ourselves, but who's the oversight?
If it was a condition that was added in or what have you, if that was part of the decision, then it would be both the building official and me. Being that it's a planning effort going over into the building effort. So it'll be both of us.
Okay.
Out there for dignity.
What?
Out there for dignity.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so now it is time for the applicant to make their presentation, and whoever is speaking for the applicant, please give your full name and your address for our records. So who is speaking?
I am.
Okay, I am. If you would please stand and give us your full name and address and tell us what you'd like to tell us.
Yeah, hello. I'm Troy O'Brien, commissioners. I own Gerhardt Storage, and my full address is 2626 Northwest Three Sisters Drive in Bend, Oregon.
Could you speak up?
Yeah, sorry, 97703. I was born and raised in Astoria, so recently moved to Bend with my family. So know the area well. Applicant has submitted the three different conditions for variance to build this facility. Since we bought the facility last year, what we've been looking to do is improve an old facility that needed to be updated. And so we've made many changes over the last few months, and the goal is to continue to do that. We see a demand in the area for storage. And so we want to be able to apply that to the community and have more of the larger units, as well as some inside climate controlled units that doesn't exist very well much in the city other than U-Haul. And so there is a demand for that. What we're applying for, I'd like to, can I say what consider now?
Can you say what?
What we should consider, because one of the things I'd like to consider.
This is your time. You
Okay.
can say whatever you want to.
With the fence is
Sort
that, if there is concerns about the height and the vegetation, that we do look at putting the vegetation in place rather than the wood fencing. The reason why the wood fencing was a variance we were asking against that is just the longevity of that life. Wood fencing, especially in the coast, the fence posts rot out. Even a treated fence is only going to last 10 years at max. A cyclone fence is going to last a lot longer. So replacing that, falling down, also the potential, if we're not replacing the posts right away, we don't notice they're damaged. Somebody does try to climb over there, it falls, those kind of things. It's a potential hazard. Don't have as much problem with that with a cyclone fence. But obviously I understand the concerns neighbors and city may have with any sort of height. And so proposing that there would be some vegetation added as a buffer so that there wasn't any sort of line of sight problems with a tire fence. We already have experienced people climbing over the berm. I was over there again today, and there is actually a walkway over the berm or that steps to the berm and can just go right over the fence and into the facility. One of the things that we're really trying to do is just clean up the security around there. I understand I've had conversations with the sheriff, and there was a history of some burglaries at the facility. We're cleaning it up. We want to make sure it's secure. We've added security. We're going to be adding more cameras as part of this build out and make sure that it is locked tight. There's also a lock gate now. So all the things to make sure that it's a secure facility and it's not a attraction place for people to come down Garden Terrace and say, well, I can get into this facility and then break into it. So we don't want that kind of traffic on Garden Terrace as well. So that would be the proposal there as well. But any other questions? Happy to. Ty is also a civil engineer. It's on the phone as well. So if there's any specific questions related to that. When it comes to the actual fire department's connections, we did update the plan to show both of those connections. that are there, as well as the access through the vegetation. So the plan was updated to reflect those, the feedback.
Maybe we did that right after the step.
Afterwards.
So the plans are correct.
The plans are correct.
So, thank you to the commissioners. No. Commissioners, do you have?
I have one question.
Yes, John.
Yeah, the gentleman who just spoke should give us some insight, or could give us some insight related to your traffic questions. Does your comments about potentially adding 233 units, is that about the number that the owner believes will be added? And does he have any data related to the number of visits that a unit perhaps gets per year, something along those lines that could help us assess the traffic impact?
Yes, definitely. So the actual number of units, I thought it was right around 180, not 200 and something, and I can double check on that.
I had nothing better to do today to count and add. So based on what I have here, because I do not have complete information.
Okay. I'll get,
Anything that said exist, I counted the spaces and the ones that did not say existing building.
okay. I'll get the actual number, but given the 223, at 100% off, sorry. Wait.
That's what I'll ask them, because I can't count them because I don't. Oh, well, there may be fewer, because you answer his question first, and I'll come back to it, because I'll tell you how I counted it.
Okay, and I'll get you a report of the actual number, and I'll actually look on my computer just to make sure I have that number right. To address the question, John, on what you were asking is at 100% occupancy, the average tenant will visit their facility or their unit once per month. And so you're looking at somewhere like total trips per day is between 2 to 5 on average. Now you're going to see higher volumes, of course, at payment times. What I've noticed in Gearhart is that there tends to be more people that want to pay physically than in other facilities that I've been a part of that will do it via credit card, but still it's only a couple of days per month that you see that kind of higher volume into the store. One of the things that we're going to be doing is making sure with this new proposed plan is there'll actually be an office that's outside the gate. So really easy to access. There's parking there. And so we don't believe that there'll be a problem with anybody jamming up for one-on-one as well. Does that answer? Could you hear me, John?
John, you're mute.
John, you're mute.
Supposed to unmute when I hit spacebar, but I didn't. Sorry about that. Thank you for that. It's very helpful. The 2 to 5 trips per day that you estimate is for these particular added units.
That's a facility normally with 100% occupancy at anywhere from 100 to 200 units. Well, I can see if I can got any data on what it is for 300 units, but you're not talking about double the amount of traffic. Because again, those people aren't visiting their units multiple times a month.
So it's currently 2 to 5 trips per day, and this might add at most 50% more traffic.
At most.
Okay, so 3 to 7 trips per day or something like that. Okay.
What does traffic have to do with the variance?
I'm just reflecting on the question that was asked earlier.
It doesn't have specifically anything to do with the variance, but the reason he wants to have the variance is because he wants to build this facility.
So if we don't give him the variance, he doesn't get to add buildings that he wants to add. So it's kind of on us.
I see your gate is staying in the same place while you're drawing. Is that your plan?
Yes.
There's quite a bit, I mean, that gate's 30 feet off the road, 40 feet off the road, right?
Correct. Yeah. When we put that gate in here in the last year, we wanted to make sure, many conversations with my civil, is that an RV could pull off and there would still not be any sort of backup on one.
Right.
Are there other questions? Go ahead, Sharon.
Hi,
Hi, Sharon.
okay. I looked at this really hard and I saw existing building A, existing building B. I didn't see an existing building C unless your building C is existing. Doesn't say existing.
Oh, you're right.
Is there a building C right now?
There is a building that's labeled, so what, the way the plan is today is anything that has hash marks on it is an existing building. Hash marks around the end.
Diagonal?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
diagonal hash.
there's no C building C.
Yes, there is, right in
Since,
dead center.
It doesn't say existing.
It's not existing.
Already exists.
Right.
No, it doesn't. No, it does not. That is a brand new building. That's
Okay,
right.
okay, that was one question I had.
Okay.
The fence.
C. oh, Sorry, I was going to add C is actually replacing a Connex building, so it's existing in location and just being replaced with a more up-to-date building.
Okay, so that means, is that the same for building H? Is that Connex that's gonna be replaced?
No, building H is a manufactured home today. And there's an on-site manager that lives in the manufactured home.
That's a home.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys are gonna add in building G, F, C, right? GFC? Is
And
that
I,
right?
and I,
Where's I?
right next to 1-1.
Yeah. This one? Yeah, it's hard to see, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. So you're gonna add in 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings. And then C, you're gonna kind of redo, so really 5 buildings, is that right?
There's 4, oh, you're putting in G2. 4 buildings in G is a covered facility only, so it's not, it won't have sides on it. It's only a covered for RV and boat.
Okay,
So
So like a carport,
yes.
which was not clear.
What,
so G is all carport.
yes.
Is there a back to the building?
Yeah.
Not on G, no.
Carport with no back. So how do you keep people from jumping from the top of the berm onto one of the RVs?
Right now with a fence that's only 6 feet tall. And so we'd like to raise it to 10 feet tall so that we can avoid people jumping from the berm into the facility.
Okay, so have you ever climbed a chain link fence?
Yeah.
So why?
What's that?
So why?
Yeah.
It's pretty easy, isn't it? It's like totally simple to climb a chain link fence and go over the top and drop down on the other side. So my question is, if this is for security purposes, why would you just want a chain link fence? Now, to add to that question, I'm not trying to be difficult, you have a pretty nice, looks fairly new fence on the south side, right?
Yeah, yes,
Is it fairly new
Yeah,
or
yeah.
looks new?
yeah, it was
And it's got some siding on it.
correct.
What is that, plastic?
Yeah, there's plastic slats.
But what that siding does is, number one, it makes it look a little better, I think.
Yeah.
Just personally, aesthetic wise, but it makes it so you really can't climb the fence, right?
Yeah.
So what about putting something like that along the north
I think that's a great suggestion.
instead? Next question. Is this retaining wall you're gonna put on the east side, right? You're gonna build a retaining wall, is that
Yes.
right? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, there'll be blocks that put in there.
And how do you keep it from getting over the retaining wall into the yard,
There's a fence on the backside of,
the retaining wall?
on the backs of the embankment. And so if you go to the very top of the bank, there's a fence at the top of the hill.
At the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, you can't see it. It's brush back
well, I
there.
couldn't get in there to see, so.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah, there's a fence in the back. It's only a 6-foot fence up there,
Okay.
but there's nothing to the back of us anyway. The access to that would be extremely hard because it's the swamp land and there's nothing back there.
Right, but at some point in time, and I don't know if our path is gonna go there and if it's gonna extend that far and how that's all gonna work out. We've got a provision for a pedestrian path to go in that area, so we gotta kind of keep that in mind too. So that's gonna change access to that back.
Okay.
How long did you say you own this
A
property?
year.
A year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Anyone else? Yes, Tom.
I mean, you can build a fence and if people want to climb and get in, they're gonna do that. I mean, you know, you're gonna do your best to try to secure your property, obviously, and for your customers, so, you know, that's just the way that is gonna be. As far as the buffer between Garden Terrace Road and that neighborhood and your property, as Garrett said, you can already kind of view into your property a little bit from parts of that area, so any complaints that there would be about the neighborhood, this affecting the neighborhood, you know, those already exist, as far as I can tell. Right, like some people can see into the property, you know, but you're planning on adding some vegetation and the fencing. Are you gonna add to the berm?
Yeah.
Okay,
The berm's not on our property.
good point. I guess it's just an observation that part of that buffer already does not exist, so I don't think it's
So people were concerned that
they'd already be concerned. That's not a question, that's just an observation.
Okay, an observation. Other
That's
questions? Bus, Terry? Nothing? I have some questions. Homeless people have been visiting storage units and setting up housekeeping. Are you going to be having a full-time person there?
With the new facility?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll still have somebody in the office.
No, I said full-time or just during the business hours?
Just during business hours. But the other thing that we're adding is, one, the things that we've been doing as far as gates and things like that for access control, but then also adding security cameras too. And our gates are not open 24 hours a day. So they close at a certain time.
Okay, so you have a wood fence on the north side already. There's a wood fence that goes along,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, which looks fine and matches the fence on the other side for the dentist office. Right, on the other side of Garden, whatever that road is. Just wait, I will get to you, believe me.
I was just trying to answer your question.
No, I mean, you have a wooden fence there already. And as an aside to you, I mean, I worked on this fencing ordinance for months. Wood, we have wood. So, and I agree with Sharon, I can climb a cyclone fence too, which is pretty bad. Let's see, do I have any other notes? I have notes all over the place here. Okay. Oh, is the surface inside where you have the storage units, is it gonna be paved or is it just gonna continue to be gravel?
it's just gonna stay gravel.
It's just gonna stay gravel. But it is paved at the front going on to 101. Is that,
Correct.
that's what
And
I
then
think.
there is a paved path going down from 101 past the gate right now, and that will stay.
All right, anything else? Okay. You can sit down for that. All right, do I have anyone else, anyone that would like to speak as a proponent of this? Is there anyone there, Chad?
Sure.
No, not that I see.
Okay, do I have any opponents? I have Joseph Clark.
Yes, that would be me.
All right, if you would like to give us your full name and address for the record, because we do tape record everything, and then you may speak.
Okay, my name is Joseph Clark, and I live at 1332 Garden Terrace Road in Gearhart. No. I'm sorry because I've never attended a meeting like
That's
this before,
okay.
and I didn't mean to interrupt or
No,
anything, but
no problem.
I just wanted to say, well, we moved there in June of 2019. And it's actually kind of a mixed fence that borders us right now. We do have the berm, but there is actually cyclone fence that runs along that northern border at this current time. Anyways, so I received a letter from the planning commission about the variance. I didn't get my letter submitted in time. I don't know if it reached any packets, but I did draft something that I'd like to read to the commission. And I said, I see that my preparedness is lacking. I did not submit to be able to comment on time. I didn't realize at the time that I wrote this that we would be able to come and speak in person. So I still wish to write and submit my opinion to the board. And I wanted to talk about outside of the city letter, no one has contacted anybody that I'm aware of the north side property owners. But me specifically, I haven't. Actually, only 5 of the 7 houses are actually owner occupied. The north fence is only inadequate of keeping tenants from our experience has been that through COVID and other things and the RV storage, our problem has been actually people coming out of over the fence from the south. And we had different vehicles get burglarized, and we had lots of trespassing, et cetera, happening, especially during COVID. We hear generators running intermittently all the time from the different RVs that are currently stored there. About a week and a half ago, we had somebody that was allegedly evicted from the premise, and they did not have current tags on their RV, so it was out front of there for approximately a week. It was on private property. I don't know if you were made aware of that or not, Mr. Brady, Mr. O'Brien, excuse me. But somehow the RV ended up leaving. So our experiences on the north side have actually been more from people coming out of the storage facility versus none of us are really interested in entering the storage facility. But as far as the actual fencing goes, me personally, I would like to see a 10-foot fence. We have many spotlights and different security things that are put in place on that property, but they extend and are visible into our living rooms at night. And again, like you were talking about climbing the cyclone fence, my experience in years that I've lived there has only been from inside out, not from outside in. So and you know, our concern is more of the management of the property. Currently, there is a broken power pole, and there is a wire that is hanging from just below the canister, whatever they're called on the power poles. And I ended up coming to the city office here, and they referred me, and that was February 22nd that I reported that to the building inspectors in Astoria. But I have no idea whether anything was followed up on that or not. But I do have the pictures on my phone if anybody would like to view them. So our concern is more of the management of the property and what's going to happen. And I kind of have a mixed basket on whether we would like things to be, you know, at the 5-foot offset or the 15-foot offset. Because to me, it's a either or. I understand the fire trucks maneuvering inside the compound, but also I would look at the aspect of the fire being able to be put out from the edge of the property too. In some places, the berm is very easily walked up, and there are people that you know, could walk up to the edge of the berm. The other places, it's very steep, and even with, you know, special shoes or things that you can't climb up to the top of it. So I'm just kind of here as a mixed emotions thing. I like to see improvements, and it's hard to view and say that this is an improvement when there's, you know, not the understanding of securities. I think that we possibly could have talked about a lot, or can possibly talk about a lot of different things, and so it's kind of a mixed bag for me, but.
Thank you. I had a question for you.
Yes.
So are the lights from the storage place shining across the road into your room, into your house?
Correct. They have a light pole that is approximately, I would guess, about 20 feet up, that has some halogen bulbs in it, and but also recently we also had the company that came through that trimmed all of the vegetation around the power lines. So Garden Terrace, we have all of our power is underground, but the power lines run along that fence border that we're talking about for your variance. There are 2 poles there, and all the wires run there as well. So, no, above ground. And that's one of the poles that, my understanding from my neighbor, which is, she's not an owner, but one of the excavators that has been doing the improvements next door actually hit one of those power poles, and I have the picture if you'd like to see it. And has broken it off, and it's hanging by the wires, so.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask him?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Clark, so I just want to be clear about this. I assume you've talked to some of your neighbors about the situation as well.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And is it consensus that you all do not mind an expanded storage facility?
I don't think anybody, our biggest concern was that the property line, which we were not sure, and the variances that we were talking about, our concern was that the berm that is there was going to be vacated for whatever reason. And so our whole thing is that the berm is staying. So we're comfortable with most things. But what I understand after reading the applicant's information is that the big concern is the in or out from, their concern is things going into the property. Our concern is actually the opposite, because, you know, our experience, whether it was under your ownership or prior, was people coming out of the property through that area. So I am very much in support of a 10-foot cyclone fence, and possibly your plastic inserts to discourage those things. But my concern is from people coming out, not people going in.
Okay. So you're not worried, I'm just picturing what this is gonna be like. You're gonna have a lot more storage units added, and that creates, you know, a little bit more noise for you guys potentially. And I just wondered if that was at all a concern on your part.
Well, the noises that I would complain about are the people that store their Harleys over there, and come summertime, they get off work and they have dinner, they come over about 7 o'clock and they pull that thing out, and they warm it up for about a half hour. And then they go ride for about 2 hours, and it's dark, then they come back and they cool it down for a half hour. But I mean, these are things that with storage are kind of unavoidable. Again, I don't think you've been a long time owner, so understanding that some of these RVs have been utilized for different purposes, and probably many of them are not even roadworthy that have been sitting in there. And you know, if any of the alleged part, and I have the pictures of the RV that was out there for about a week and a half, and you know, that individual said that they had been a customer there for 18 years. So I don't, you know, I don't know how to respond to that. It's all alleged, but you know, their story was they needed to wait EMV because they got moved out on a Friday and it was a 3-day weekend, but come Wednesday, they were still there. So I don't think that they were urgently seeking the tags that they were saying to move their RV, so, but, you know, I'm concerned with security too, but our security is kind of the reverse of yours, so, but, you know, as a business owner, I understand that, you know, you want to be secure for your customers as well, so.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other opponents? Is there anyone with neutral comments? Moving on. You're not seeing anything, right, Jeff?
No.
Okay, applicant, would you like to rebut anything to the step?
I don't know, I'll address, not rebut anything that was said, and so appreciate, is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Appreciate the concerns and things that you said about the tenants or the customers of the facility prior to ownership, and boy, I'll get my contact information if you have anything in the future too, because there was people living in the facility. And so that was a challenge that we saw and something I had to mitigate. And I talked to the sheriff when I purchased the unit about some things that we have to do. And some of those requirements we talked about are tags. And so every vehicle has to run, every vehicle has to have current tags, and nobody stays the night. And so we put in a lot of policies in place to make sure that that happens and are getting very strict about it. Now, I was told it was there for a couple of days and we were trying to get them to move it as quickly as possible. I wasn't aware that it was 5, but let me know in the future. We'll exchange contact information because I don't want that kind of stuff. Sure. And we want to make it a nice facility, and that's what we've been spending a lot of time cleaning up.
So if he comes to you and he says, you know, we've been having a problem with blah, blah, you'll address it.
Yeah, or go see the manager first, Terry. If you're not getting what you want from Terry, make sure that. And then also, as far as the lighting goes and just addressing that kind of stuff. So all the build and what I even propose in this plan, once we submit for plan, is everything will have building lighting only down facing that meets code. And that's what's on the buildings today. We did add more lighting over the last year to all of the buildings, but the lighting that is being talked about that is on a pole is not maintained by us. That's all PG&E. As well as that pole that is broken and sideways is not ours as well. And we've notified them about it and they've done nothing about it. And so.
I'm researching right now. Okay.
So.
I know what I wanted to say. In reading the file numbers here, just for the record, it should be tax lot 4701 and 4700. And on the information I read, it had 4700 twice. Just for your records, yeah. You have it that way. It's okay. I just wanted to.
Your description, right?
Your description. You have 4700 and it's that way in a report also, that rather than 4701, I just want to make sure. It was in for the recording. Okay. All right.
And yeah, and to your point, the other reason was to replace an existing cyclone fence. So that's what we're going to replace it. The wood fence that we have today is around the residential property. And so that fence would be removed once we put the new building in place because the residential part is going to leave. And it will be a cyclone fence up there to match the existing gate fence. And that is all facing the highway. It's not facing a commercial location. And so that's why we put that fence in.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So I will close the public hearing. It is now time for the commissioners to discuss. So looking to anyone, did they have any comments? Sharon's nodding her head. Sharon, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I guess I had 2 concerns about this situation that I didn't come up with any answers about. But number 1 is if you grant this variance, then the next person that comes along do you have to grant their variance and then the next person, blah, blah, blah. So that was my first concern, is setting precedent by granting the variances. And I'm relatively new to this type of situation, so I don't really know what that looks like. My other concern was, and you brought this up, Virginia, is that us granting these variances allows them to expand the building that they have there. So we are kind of involved in that. And so my mind went to, our mandate is to uphold the comprehensive plan as a planning commission. And in the comprehensive plan, it says that Earhart's supposed to be kept to primarily a residential town. So then I asked myself, well, if we are granting variances that allow increases in a commercial properties business, i.e. buildings, traffic, blah, 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 whatever. If we're doing that, is that in keeping with the comprehensive plan? So, and I'm throwing that out to you guys, because I don't know the answer to that. So, you know, we are supposed to uphold a vision that was set out in the comprehensive plan. And are we doing that by granting a variance that will allow a pretty substantial increase in the commercial situation of this property? Those are my thoughts. I don't have answers to them, but those are my concerns.
To address your first concern, I've been on this, I think it was 6-7 years, and we get variances requests all the time. And I think that we have handled them each on its own set of facts and on its own basis. And, you know, Russ, you've been here longer than I have. And each one that comes up, we never say, hey, we did it before, we have to do it now. I have never seen that happen. And as far as the commercial development, if it's zoned commercial and it meets all the codes and meets the standards, that you should, even if you don't like the project, you should grant it. And based upon the planner's recommendations, he didn't point out anything that violates, in my opinion, the comprehensive plan. And I don't think it's up to us to say, hey, I don't like that project, I won't approve it. If it meets the criteria, and if I don't like it, I still have to vote for it. That's my job.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also, the comprehensive plan B, it defines, you know, down the block from here, that is being really restricted commercial, and specifically mentions commercial on the highway as the place for things that we don't want on the main drag, on our Pacific way. So that this place is where it should be, doing what it's supposed to do.
And my biggest concern on that side of the road is if this were a variance for a residential, I would look long and hard at it, like we have the last few times the variances have come up. The commercial, I don't have a problem with this particular. And I just wish more people from that side of the highway would be coming to our meetings and telling us about all these variances that we've been granting, because I would love to hear them, because they're the ones that are going to be affected. I don't live over there, I live over here, and they don't show up. One did, and I appreciate that.
Don, do you have stuff?
I agree with, I think Russ and Terry specifically about the commercial zone area, that is the spot to do this. And it sounds like you guys are trying to improve the property and the business and the security and all that kind of stuff. And so the setback, sounds like it accommodates, you know, safety and fire, and then also expanding the business. So I think that it's a proper project to go for.
Judy?
I have nothing in particular to say about this proposal and the variance request. I have to say, I just hope you've done your competitive analysis well enough, because it seems to me there is an overabundance of storage capacity around here. Everywhere you turn, there are storage facilities, but that's.
I can tell you after looking for our business that there are none there.
Well, I hear that. I wonder what the hell is in all those storage units. But, you know, that's a whole different story. I have no concerns about the request.
I have many concerns about it. My first concern is that we have a plan. We have a plan to have it set back 15 feet when you're bordering up to a residential area. Once we start granting one business that variance, yes, Sharon, the next person who comes along will say, well, you did it for them. And if we don't grant it, they will go and move it on up the road. The second thing is with the wood fences, wood rots, I'm sorry. But we all have, most of us have figured out wood houses work a lot better because your cyclone fence is gonna rust. And it's gonna fall over just the same way, and cyclone fence is easy to climb. My problem with the whole thing for the variance is that the planner says that if we don't grant it, it will give them a hardship. And that was where I had my problem. Because you got land just a little over a year ago, according to tax records. You knew what the regulations were then, you knew what the offsets were and what you had to have there. I'm believing. And now we're being asked to throw that out so that you can make more money. And that's what I have my problem with. It is not our responsibility to make sure that someone makes more money. And so I mean, I don't see the hardship. I simply do not see it. And the wood fence, you can see it, the wood fence, particularly right along the 101. I think that the wood fence sitting there on Garden Terrace along the Dennisbrook side, you have a wood fence on the other side. And I just can't do this. I'm concerned about security. So many other storage places are having to deal with security at all times of the night. And just having this many storage places, plus having RVs parked there opens up people going both sides of the fence, I'm afraid. So that's what I'm at. Oh, John, where'd you go, John? You're not there. What'd you do to John?
Yeah, I'm right here. I don't know what's happening.
No, you're not there. Chad moved you off. You're off the screen. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting conversation because I share some of the concerns that you've raised related to, you know, it's not our obligation as a planning commission to make variances so that a business can be more profitable. The reason, though, I'm not particularly concerned is that the one neighbor who did come, and much appreciate that he did and spoke, didn't really express a lot of concerns about the setback issue. He seemed to indicate that he felt that the berm protected them sufficiently from this space. And I think it in many ways comes back down to the nature of this fence that we would be required to, or we would request that the owner apply. And I did hear at one point, I can't tell exactly who's speaking all the time, but it might have been the chair indicated that the south fence had the plastic inserts and that would be more difficult to climb and it was more attractive. And so I would suggest that if we do end up approving this, which we may or may not, but if we do, that we modify the language to indicate that the north fence be constructed in the same vein, same style, same approach as the south fence. So I'm a little bit still up in the air here. I've got to think about it as we're preparing to vote. But I guess if the neighbors really had a big issue with it, I would have thought they would have told us that, and I didn't really hear that. I heard concerns that that the owner is trying to mitigate and trying to make an improved situation for the neighbors, and it sounds like he's willing to do so. So I tend to be open to letting the owner try to do that.
Okay, thank you. Chad, do you have a picture of that? Anything with the south fence? Because I didn't look, Sharon, so I don't know what.
As a matter of fact, I have a video.
A video, wow.
I don't know big it's gonna be. Well, it's not bad. You want me to cut you out of that? No. There's Angelina. This is me giving the new police car a little bit of work in.
Oh, you're breaking.
So in this area right here, this is where the berm is low. There is parts of a fence that are back there, starting about here. You see that 6-foot cyclone fence. Then the berm grows pretty large. The berm is probably 10 feet at this location. So I'm not sure that any type of fence would be seen from this side unless it was taller than 10 feet. But then it comes back down into this corner here where there is an area that it can be seen. The other thing I wanted to show you, if I can. Let's see here, in 3 simple moves. Yeah. Right, okay. Okay, so this is our GIS mapping of this particular area, shows all the property lines that we have. Currently, all the vehicles are pushed back against the property line pretty well, and they are stored there. As far as our code goes, that can continue. Parking does not have a setback. So if these RVs continue to be here with or without a top, if it's without a top and we don't allow that building, because of the setback, the vehicles can still park back to that line. That's all that I just want to make you aware of.
Wait, I'm sorry. It's gonna be a carport, so is that considered a building?
Yes,
Okay, so if they didn't have the carport, the vehicles could still,
yes,
there would be no problem with,
there would be no setback for parking.
gotcha.
It'd be
But
right on
because they're
property.
putting the carport in, then we have to consider that.
That would be the variance.
But isn't it building I that they're wanting to put in that setback? G, H, the one at the front.
Yeah.
They're going to put that back within the 5 feet, or at 5 feet. H. Yeah, H.
I want to make a motion. I move, if we're ready for that, I move that we grant the 5-foot setback variance, that we grant a cyclone fence variance for the north property line with privacy inserts into the screening, and that city officials determine the height of that fence, you know, as per the berm. The berm defines the height of it in the opinion of city officials.
So,
State that again. I'm writing and Angela's writing.
So I'm proposing we grant the 5-foot variance, that we grant a cyclone fence, that we grant a cyclone fence for the north property line height of that fence. Well, the makeup of the cyclone fence includes privacy sladding to you know, block views, and that the height of the fence is from 6 foot to 10 foot at the determination of the city official, Chad or Leonard, or
keeping the berm in mind.
yeah, the berm defines the fence height.
If there's no berm 6 foot, if there is a berm 10 foot.
I second.
Okay, just wait a minute. What about any of the conditions? Are you including conditions?
Did I?
That's
not-
what I'm asking.
Did I not cover the conditions?
I thought he covered it.
What conditions were you speaking about?
I gotta find the right one here.
Evergreen planting?
Okay. It says, height 8 feet fence, wood between 6 feet and 10 feet, so you're throwing that one out.
I'm eliminating because wood's gonna go to hell way sooner than the cyclone, but
Okay. All right, but with the other conditions?
Wait,
We
so
have to-
so what happens to the evergreen planting?
Yeah, well, I'll amend it to say cyclone fencing or evergreen planting at the discretion of the city officials, depending on what the location determines.
And with the other conditions. There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay?
2, 3, 4.
I think
Yeah.
2, 3, 4
Yeah,
would
the
remain intact.
drainage, I do agree the drainage should be addressed. And of course, fire, to me, the fire department will be addressed during the building permit process.
Okay, but we still have to say that, Raj.
Yeah, okay, so let's take all the recommendations, 1, 2, 3, 4, with number 1 being modified by my motion.
Okay. Gary, you
I
second?
second as amended.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Sharon?
Yeah, Chad? Was the city gonna wanna be a part of this whole figure out the fence site and the evergreen planting and? I mean,
I think we can do that, especially with the code enforcement in portion of what Angelina and I do. The fence in behind the berm, this is the way that I would like to handle it. The fence in behind the berm is not seen. The fence that is not behind the berm is seen. There is a provision in our code that where wooden fencing is preferred or actually required for the buffer zone in between a neighborhood and a business. In the areas where there is no berm and the fence can be seen, I think that what I understand and you'd like us to do is potentially hold on to that and maybe have them transfer from a cyclone fence into a wooden fence for the front part to maybe buffer the neighborhood
no,
as well.
that's not my.
I didn't say that.
But that's okay, that's the way I was taking it. But if it was cyclone all the way through, we can accommodate that, and we can make sure that the evergreen plantings are done as well. That would get over the 8-foot height requirement.
It's cyclone with the slats, right?
Yeah, privacy slats.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that would be, got it. So I think we're on the same page, and I think we could accommodate that.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Please, keep that to, all opposed say no, no. All right, moving on to the second public hearing for tonight. And if you want to leave, and those people that want to leave now, can leave. Not you, Dawn. I have to find a sheet here. Okay, this is file number 23-02B. No, yes, 23-02B. Variance request submitted by Sean Efton, if I'm mispronouncing that, for property located at 202G Street. What did you write here? G Street, I think is what you meant. You put Stan. Further described as assessors plat 6.10.9 AD, tax lot 5900. Said request is for side yard setbacks to remove the existing 134 square foot covered road currently in setbacks. Replace 224 square feet of road with roof deck and glass railing. All right, do I have the applicant? Yes, if you please stand, give us your full name, your address, please.
Sean Evian, 3998.
Is that AEJEN?
J's like a Y, it's Norwegian.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
We're gonna have a staff report.
You know, that's a good point, Sharon. Excuse me.
Sorry.
I just opened it. I opened them both at the beginning. Okay, I opened it, I read it. I have a staff report, I am so sorry. This week is nearly over. Okay, staff report.
All right, thank you. So this is a variance request to have shorter front and rear setbacks than are required by the Gearhart zoning ordinance. The applicant wants to convert an area of roof into a deck, and also wants to remove a roof area that covers an outdoor walkway from the existing front setback. So some important context, I think, for this proposal is that all of the deck area that's being proposed falls within the existing building footprint. So the applicant's requesting to modify structure that you could consider non-conforming at this point. And they're also proposing to actually bring the building into further compliance with the Gearhart zoning ordinance by removing a roof that is over a covered walkway from the front setback. And a variance is still required because they're proposing something that is new and different within the front and rear setback. So let's review some of the details. So this is a view of the subject property from, from the southwest corner, looking up at the west facing wall of the property that would be modified to have a deck. So it's basically this face that would experience the changes. And it's this part of the building right here, if you can see my mouse, that's in the front setback, and this part that's in the rear setback. So that's a little bit of context for you. Oh, and then some of this covered walkway structure would be removed by the applicant per their proposal. Some basic context. This is the R1 zone. Surrounding uses are residential. Nothing too remarkable there, given the scope of the variance. Looking at the applicant's preferred option. This is the plan view where they've, I'll start at the southwest corner of the structure where the area outlined, or the area with green fill and diagonal hatching is proposed to have structure removed from the front setback. And moving north across the property where an area of roof that is within the front setback would be converted into a second story deck with a glass railing. And then that deck would continue to the north in an area that is not that's within the permitted buildable area, where a setback would not be needed to do anything. A variance would not be needed to do anything. And moving into the rear setback, that deck would continue, replacing some existing roof area. And moving over to the right side of the screen, I'm not sure if you have any material blocking the view there, or if I just moved it, but you can see a view from a elevation view from G Street that illustrates essentially the existing roof area that would be replaced by deck. So you have a little bit more material in the setback, the front setback and the rear setback, that's going higher in elevation, right? You also have some opaque material that's being removed and being replaced with deck, all of it within the existing building structure footprint. And that's just to give you some sort of hone in on what seemed like sort of like the critical basics of this. So let's move to the staff report and review a few of the findings. In terms of hardship, the applicant basically argued that there is an existing, there's existing sliding glass doors that would be better protected from westerly weather by the proposed deck than by the existing roof area. And staff found that this is a reasonable argument. And that's the basis for the hardship request, as far as we could tell. The existing structure configuration was not created by the applicant, so they didn't cause the hardship per se. There is predominantly westerly weather that impacts structures in the North Coast region. Moving on to impacts to neighbors. To my knowledge, we haven't received any comments in opposition identifying actual impacts to neighbors. While the Planning Commission could reasonably find that expanding the sort of living or occupiable area of the structure into the front and rear setbacks, facilitating additional use by people, potential noise, that could constitute a potential impact to neighbors, and could also conceivably impact privacy of neighbors as well, having people use that area within the front and rear setbacks that they currently can't use because it's just roof. However, again, we haven't received any public comments in opposition identifying those as actual concerns. And the applicant's arguments seemed reasonable that the proposed deck structure is going to be mostly transparent with glass railings. And again, the variance is to build a deck within the existing building structure footprint. Finally, that they're proposing to remove structure from the front setback at the first story level. And so in some regards, this proposal lessens impacts on neighbors that you could imagine exist right now. Is the request necessary to enable reasonable use of the property? To the extent that having an outdoor deck space to enjoy the outdoors and views of the ocean is a reasonable use of residential property, yes. To the extent that trying to protect sliding glass doors from the weather is a reasonable use, sure. The proposal seems to be the variance request seems to be necessary to enable a reasonable use of the property. And so we found this criteria, with this criteria, the proposal is consistent. And again, with the comprehensive plan, did not find specific criteria that were applicable to the request. So one area of concern was with the site's septic system. And so the applicant hasn't provided complete details on the location of all of their septic system components. We are aware that they are located west of the structure. And even though the proposal doesn't include expansion of the building structure, there would be some structural changes to support the proposed deck. And so we've addressed that concern with a recommended condition of approval. And finally, well, I'll go on to the recommendation. So the recommendation is that the Planning Commission approve the variance request. to allow the applicant's preferred proposal as it's identified in their application with the following conditions. The proposed site modifications shall not impair the septic system or impact access to maintain or inspect the septic system. And the applicant shall comply with all laws related to septic systems and shall provide the septic system components locations in relation to the proposed structures on plans submitted to the city with their building permit application. The applicant's proposed removal of the covered walkway structure is an important fact upon which the findings of this report were made. And so the applicant shall implement removal of the covered walkway before or concurrently with any other modifications to the building. And so that second condition is just, to ensure that one of the reasons that this proposal appears to be reasonable is that they're removing structure from the setback. And so we want to see that that actually happens. And so those are the two conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Garrett, could you return, this is John, could you return to the first page of your presentation that had the schematics?
Sure.
Yeah, this page. On the right, no, not that page, Yeah. On the right, there's a dotted line that points to this upper tier structure. Is that existing, or is that also part of their new work?
The topmost.
I said dotted, but I meant a line with a dot at the end.
Sure. So the topmost parts of the structure that you see in the schematic on the right, it's basically it's pitched roof, right? Correspond to the green rectangle that I am highlighting with my mouse. Let me see if I can highlight it with a square.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, and so that modification is not within the setback and would not require a variance.
I see. So that's not within our purview. Does it change the overall height of the house? And do we have height requirements?
The overall, it doesn't change the overall height of the house, and it does not change the overall height of the house, and the height requirement appeared to be met when I did my review of the plan.
Okay, that was my only concern. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? I think my question is better for the applicant, so.
Hi, I'm Jane Paulson, and I'm super sorry I couldn't be there.
Who is
here.
this?
Hi.
The owner, just wait a minute, I'm not to you yet.
Okay.
Just wait, if you get me confused, I forget things.
All right.
Okay, so we've had the staff report, now we go on to the applicant. Do you want to speak, or does she want to speak? Or do you both want to speak?
Well, how about, can I just say hi? And I'm super
You can
sorry.
say hi, you need to give us your name.
Yeah.
And your address, please.
Sure. Address where I am or address of the property?
Address where we would mail something to you.
Sure. Jane Paulson, 1829 Northeast Stanton Street, Portland, Oregon. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm in the middle of a trial in Portland, and I'm waiting for our jury, which just went out today. And so I had to be here. Otherwise I would have been there in person. And Vanilla Wood has the proposal for us. And so I think they're going to do the presentation, but I just wanted to give my apologies for not being there in person. Helen, my partner, and I, we own at 256 North Marion right now. And we'd made an offer on this house at 202 G Street and didn't get it. and there was another house they were holding. And then once we bought the one at 202 G Street opened, we love Gearhart. Our goal is not to do anything that's going to make anyone mad, but we just want to try and improve the house.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So now, I'm sorry, now would you like to speak? It's my fault that I forgot to do this now.
All right. Sean Evian, 3998 Carm Lane, Northeast Kaiser, Oregon. So our proposal is, when they bought the property, we didn't know the setbacks. When we looked at the setbacks, and the way that we've normally dealt with setbacks is the front, you have a rear, you have two side setbacks. So when we reviewed it at first, it looked like we met the setbacks with Ocean Street being the front. The rear was fine, and the side setbacks all met. Once we got into planning and discovered that wasn't the case, that's what arose and why we're here today. We're trying to improve the house, make it more conducive in the neighborhood. Currently, we're not increasing the footprint of anything. What we're trying to do is replace a section of roof with a roof deck, expand the roof that they have, or the deck that they have, to give them a more usable deck. And we are also removing a section of roof, 134 square feet of roof on G Street, which is currently in the setback, in the front setback of the house. So we're bringing the house closer to compliance than where it is now. As far as an elevation goes, the deck profile is thinner than the roof profile that we're replacing, and we're suggesting a glass railing so we improve people's views, the neighbors as well as the owners, in lieu of a solid one, and we're reducing visual chatter from any neighboring properties. We'd be improving their views. With regards to, there's already a deck down at ground level. And with regards to the septic, that is actually out into the yard. We have requested septic scoping, and we have not received that back yet. They have been out there to do it. We just haven't received the actual lines to see where those are at. And so those will be submitted with building permit as the conditions of approval.
But Jerry and Jeff have, I've been talking to Jerry, he had surgery. So Jerry and his son Jeff at Complete Septic hired a guy to go map out the area. And because the septic area has flagstone on it, he had to tear all that up to be able to map the septic, because I think it was before the age of any of the mapping. So
yeah, there's no septic at DEQ. Could be, we've already checked there. It was before then. So we are updating that, and that will be part of the building permit process.
Anything else?
I believe that covers it.
Do we have questions? Sure.
Just want to be clear, so nothing's gonna happen to the east side of the house, it's just gonna be on the west side.
Correct.
Okay.
And so,
Yes, so we're removing some roof, and a portion of that is making the entry match the hip style, both on the left and the right, but we're removing square footage in the setback.
So I have a question. I visited the property, but it's still difficult. So on the west side there,
yes,
you have these decorative whatever things coming out. I don't know what these are called. I'm sure they're called something in building, but I don't know what they are. Is that where the deck is going to be on those, where those are right now? You know what I mean? Like this picture, this stuff.
Those little portables that are sticking out.
Yeah,
Yes, that's the level that the deck would be sitting on.
so the deck would basically be sitting now where they have these decorative things that really do
It would be
nothing.
sitting within the roof profile.
Okay, so, then the roof that is on the second floor there, where you have now this dark area that goes back in there, you're gonna take
That's
that
what-
roof up,
Yes,
you're gonna remove that roof, and then you're gonna have it up
that's the
too
taller.
low,
Yes.
because as far as I can tell, that top part on the roof, that really isn't a separate room or anything, it just goes down to the second floor, is that correct?
Correct. The existing roof, as it's going along the profile, when it gets to the deck, is a very shallow roof. with the
Right.
Same fascia,
Right,
and we're gonna remove that
Right.
and open that up to get more light into the house.
okay,
That is actually all within the current footprint and within the setback.
okay. So,
That's not part of the variant. I mean,
okay.
it's part of the overall project, but it's not part of it.
I just, it's again, we're always going, okay, what's the visual, how's it gonna affect anything, and just so I understand what you're doing. I have a glass deck, I'm built into my roof, so I know what it looks like, it might have helped, just as a side, we had a picture of. There's many different kinds out there, so we have one and geeks, so. Must seal very well. So the intention then is this deck on the second level, then is partly to protect the sliding glass doors on the first level? Is that what you're talking about, protection?
Yeah, the deck that we would be doing, replacing the roof
Right,
is protecting the two sliding glass doors on the first
on the
level.
first one, okay. That was mine.
Okay,
Needing clarification.
great.
So are you, is your preferred option A or B? What
A.
do you prefer? A,
Our preferred option is to remove the roof wrapping around and replace the section on the site plan with all deck.
Got it, okay.
This might question maybe for Chad or something, but so the house, the front door of the house or the front of the house is the south side.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what totally threw me off.
That's because that's your street address, G.
Right, okay, so now with the setbacks, so they kept saying the setback in the front, and I was thinking that was on Mayor.
Those are the road head, those are.
Yeah.
the names.
Okay, so
That's why they were confused in the beginning.
so when they built the house, they didn't use the setbacks as they should.
There weren't any.
Okay,
Yes.
well, that explains that.
The existing house is sitting 5 feet off the north property line and 8 feet off, with the little section of roof sitting inside of the 8 feet as well.
Okay.
So if Ocean was the front, then we would basically meet the existing setbacks, but because it's on G Street, we
Right.
don't. And if we apply the front and rear setbacks, that's 30 foot of setbacks on a 50-foot wide lot. We'd only have a 20 foot to build in. I mean, we wouldn't be able to build this house, period.
Do you know what year that house was built?
I believe it was 1949.
They don't have a Gen Reg address, they have a G Street address.
That close.
And so they could change their address.
You gotta raise your house $1 million.
So the front entrance structure on G Street.
Yeah.
You're taking away exactly what?
Can you switch back to?
Garrett, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up, some of the pictures that you
That's
have there.
Page 6 shows the elevation there. They would like to achieve.
So if you look at page 5, that would be G Street elevation. And the section in green is what we're removing. And then that is all area that's already within the setback that we're removing in order to bring us closer into compliance.
So you're gonna leave at the front entrance, you're gonna leave part of the roof and part of the uprights.
Right. So that we have a covered front door.
I wondered about that.
I have a question for the applicant. Okay. You're finished, thank you. Okay, do we have any proponents for this? Anyone here that wants to speak as a proponent? Is there anyone else there, Jen? No. Do we have any opponents? Do we have any neutral comments? A neutral comment. Please give us your full name and address.
My name's Devin Mercero. My address is 14945 Old Mola Road in Salem,
Can you say that
97131.
again, but say it much slower?
Will you spell your last name, please?
My name's Devin Mercero, MERSEREAU. My address is 14945 Old Mola Road, Nahalem.
Thank you.
Just so you understand completely, this membrane deck, it's basically replacing, it still is a roof. It's just a roof that you can stand on. So you understand that principle?
Yes.
So as far as line of sight and things like that, it's actually going to really improve things. Yeah. So it's like for like, it just doesn't have a pitch. It's just flat. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, do you want this, do you have anything else you want to say? Okay. All right, then I will close the public hearing. We need to discuss. Don, you have anything to say?
I think that since it's within the existing footprint from a 1940s building, then it is fine with me, and it's probably an improvement also. And why wouldn't you want to stand on the deck and look out at it?
Absolutely.
No comments.
Yeah.
I just would want to make sure that the railing part is glass and they don't switch that out to something else. It's not as see-through.
That's the intention.
That's what he submitted, so therefore we. There's something different, I guess, and it's unsubmitted, like it's Judy. I have nothing to say.
I move to approve subject.
Would you just let me have nothing to say? You want to get out here? Okay, Terry, go ahead.
I move to approve subject to the conditions.
Okay, there are the two conditions on the back about the septic system and the walkway covering. Okay, so Terry has moved.
Second, or?
I'll second.
You second.
You have it. Terry made the motion, Judy seconded it to approve the variance as requested with the conditions. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Say no. Oh, I always forget about you. You're always the second late. Oh, and did you have any comments? I am so sorry.
That's okay. I understand. No worries. No, I had no further comments.
You're off my left shoulder. All right, okay, so you are approved. Oh, it doesn't look like mine did.
Thank you all. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I appreciate it. You guys do a lot of work. That's amazing.
Good luck with your trial.
Thank you. All right, jury's out, fingers crossed.
All right. So we have no unfinished business. We have no new business. Do we have any concerns of the commission? We have no questions. Do we have any questions for the land use attorney? It is 8 o'clock and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Are there any specifics? Most of my work is in Manzanita, but I'll be doing this project. Is there any limit to how long a drop box can be out on the right of way or the off-street parking?
Yeah, you'll have to work with us on that. We'll figure that out. Okay. Yeah, you'll work with Angelina.
That is something we do not take care of.
Okay, so far.
You've already got us a trash pickup out there, so I wouldn't.
Well, yeah, there's a dump trailer.
There's a dump.
I was just thinking when I tear the roof off, if the drop box, I mean, if it was there for just a day.